Hi, I'm Michael Kearns, the Artistic Director of QueerWise, and I'm so proud to present Queers Across Years. One can only imagine what is in store for you. But we are celebrating our 10th year anniversary, so QueerWise is especially involved and engaged in this project. It started out as an intergenerational piece that would combine younger voices with older voices. But what it turned into is an inter-GENDER-ational piece. And believe me, we hear a lot about freedom and our freedom being stripped from us. But these individuals, young and old, of all shapes and sizes and stripes, are free. They have found freedom. And with that freedom, they can move mountains. So I really, really, really appreciate the work that's been done, and I appreciate the audience. We appreciate the City of West Hollywood, who has granted QueerWise a nice, generous donation to put this on. So be free, enjoy the video, tell your friends, and act upon your deepest desires.
Welcome, lavender ladies, purple-hued dudes, and everyone in between. I'm Dandy, Randy, Andy, and thrilled as fruit punch to welcome you to my first annual Queers Across Years garden party. We are decidedly expanding our consciousness and need to celebrate our inherent intrinsic similarities, no matter what pronoun we use or what color eyeshadow we wear. Each of my guests will arrive with a place card that contains the name of a celebrated queer, past or present, living or dead, and that will indicate each person's place at the table. Any similarities are strictly intentional. My first two guests may seem like an odd couple, but look closely and you'll discover the ties that bind. Now, I don't think ladies first is in our lexicon these days, but I insist on Erica being first. Erica, she says, has lived among the tribe of men, hiding out as a trans woman in the disguise of a man for my whole life. Erica's place at the table is characterized by a special guest who shares her passion. Stephen is glad something like non-binary exists in today's world. Welcome, Erica and Stephen.
I got Laverne Cox. Sweet. I love her attitude and how she conquered the entertainment industry.
Yeah.
I mean, really, 4 Emmy nominations, and on her terms, as a woman.
Exactly. The whole point of where we should be heading, which is toward accepting everybody and being more open, is that it doesn't matter, and it's not about having to label everything, not having to clarify what boxes you're checking. So says Harry Styles,
Right there.
whose seat I will be keeping warm.
Perfect. Yay.
Our table will be littered with sexual outlaws, but I have a ghostly guest from the 19th century who will blow your minds. I think Alan will relate. Alan, who was open in high school about dressing like a boy, wore big jackets, boxers or briefs, and pants that didn't stay all the way up. Welcome, Alan.
Boy George? George Michael? A different George? Some George Sand. And I also got at the table with me Laverne Cox and Harry Styles. Fantastic. Love it. George Sand was ahead of their time. We called it boy dress. My friend and I would ask each other in the early morning before the bell rang for the start of classes, "Are you going to school in boy dress today?" I started going by Alan when I went to college because I didn't identify with being a regular girl. When professors called roll the first day of class using my assigned at birth name, I told them, yes, that's me, but I prefer to go by Alan. Then on a walk to get some lunch, one of my friends asked if they could just call me by my given name. I said no. A dead name is like wearing a color you hate always. That isn't how I introduced myself to you, so it's not what you can call me. My best high school friends had always respected my changing my name. We called each other all sorts of boy names, and it had been so easy. I changed my name on Facebook to reflect the real me, which soon felt like a mistake, because even though my mother married into a family where she gained a transgender daughter mid-transition, she couldn't stand the idea of me going by another name. She was filled with rage and sadness, feeling she chose to share over dinner, one of the few times I visited her in my early years of college. So I lied. I told her that Alan was just a nickname that my bestie gave me, that I liked the name, and it made me feel happy. And I felt so unloved in that moment that I knew I couldn't share the truth with her, maybe not ever. Then there was my father. Alan was my name on all my university films, even the one that went to multiple festivals my senior year. But when my father found me a contact in the music industry, he really let me have it about my name. My resume read Alan Luke-Hamasaki at the top, but it may as well have said, I'm a horrible, spiteful child. Everything about the content was perfect according to him, but my name was unacceptable, and it's been hard sending out those applications ever since.
Wow. I wonder what Laverne Cox would say.
Yeah, but what would you say?
Well, hiding out as a trans woman in the disguise of a man for most of my life.
Right.
Okay? And as a woman in the form of a man, I observed the backroom discussions of men as they talked about women and LGBT people. And when I got older, I began to push back a little. And I found that for those men, there was very little room giving anybody that was not like them a little bit of dignity and understanding. Right. Or even compassion, for that matter. And even today, oppression continues toward women, LGBT people, people of color. Yeah. And you know, it's this great oppression being perpetuated by evangelical fundamentalists. Yeah. You know what they do? They use the love of God to justify their hate. Mm-hmm. You know, when I was young, this turned me inward and I learned to hate myself. Yeah. And I had a stint in Bible college. It was like being trained as a gladiator. And we all took this training to revolt. In fact, in Genesis 1:27, it says, and God created humans in his image, both male and female, which means God is both male and female. Right?
Yeah.
So I'm created exactly as I was meant to be. So I started to love myself again. So all I know is I just want to live in California where at least some of us marginalized people can find some dignity and understanding and compassion.
I love that. When I was a child, I was obsessed with Barbies. I wanted them all, to play with them, accessorize them, and create imaginative scenes of Barbie fighting my brother's action figures to save Ken. I was never met with punishment. The dolls were never snatched away from me. My father used to be a very strict man. He was an active police officer. Strictness came with the territory. But he would walk with me hand in hand to that now ancient Toys R Us and have me pick out whatever Barbie I wanted. My mother was the same. She never thought twice when she helped me dress up as Catwoman for 8 straight Halloweens. My parents did worry about how the outside world would deal with me, especially kids at school. They always trusted me being myself. But as a safety measure, they would whisper to my twin brother, who is older by 3 minutes, he won't let me forget it, and we're a complete opposite. They would whisper, watch out for your brother, make sure no one picks on him. Little did my parents know, I was the one looking out for my brother instead of him looking out for me. I guess kids of the 90s had more of a problem with a kid with a reading problem than a flamboyant gay kid. Today, I'm still trying to figure things out, as I guess every 20-something-year-old is. I am glad something like non-binary exists. Part of me is not all man and part of me is not all woman. The only thing I wear is vintage women's clothing because it fits me better. But I also love to play video games and play sports. The whole idea of gender norms is just exhausting. I am very privileged to be accepted and supported the way that I am. Most do not get the same treatment. And it is a thought I have struggled with for quite some time. Why did I get so lucky? Answers to questions like that might not ever come, but I do know one thing. I just like being me.
Yeah. Gordon, our next party goer, says that he only became his supreme self when he began writing. The same could be said of the special ghost guest whose place card he has.
Be yourself. Everyone else is already taken. Who said that? As queer as a green carnation. This scribe was also married and the father of 2 boys. His dalliance with the magistrate's son landed him in jail. Oscar Wilde. When I was 30, I found an 8mm film of me as a 6-year-old boy, walking on the beach, hands flying, wiggling, and free. My father used to hound me about walking straight, and I never understood what he meant. Watching the image of this little feminine boy gave me clarity about what my father had seen. It cemented my feelings of being inadequate, less than, and added to my other defect of sounding like a girl when I spoke. It wasn't until I started writing poetry and eventually stories that turned into novels that I became my supreme self. Up until that point, I hadn't understood my relationship with my lover Scott, who died of AIDS in 1989. Because of the way my father treated me, I didn't respect myself. But then, when I read my writing, the sound of my voice resonated. I had learned to love my vocalization. My writing helped me expose my fears of thinking I was a monster that only went into dark places.
Is that you, Marie? This modern woman has some family dynamics of her own to reveal. I've given her the place card of a famous literary dame from the 20th century with some frisky relatives.
Famous parents? A famous brother? Famous children? God help me, it's not one of the Kardashians, is it? Let's see. Oh, Vita Saxbo West, who used to dress as a man when out on the town with her female lovers, solidifying their matrimonial bond. I was the oldest of 6 kids, and I was told repeatedly it was my job as the oldest to take care of everyone, to make the dinners for everyone, to organize all the kids for their chores. During my first year of college, I came home every weekend to do the grocery shopping for my mom. Applying in my junior year for a 4-month exchange program in California, that was the first chance I ever had to get away from all that. In California, I met the first lesbian I was ever attracted to. She lived in a van and she wore a rhinestone electric guitar around her neck and had a copy of Sisterhood is Powerful on her van bookshelf. I was supposed to stay 4 months. I called my mother from a payphone and I told her I would not be home until Christmas, which was 8 months away. I had sex with so many men that spring and summer to prove to myself I wasn't a lesbian. That changed when a man told me I was spoiled for wanting oral sex. I said, "You helped me make a really hard decision." It was going to be women for me after all. I was going to be spoiled for life.
Our next garden party guest has battled to own the bi label for most of his life. I want John to meet Miss Marie. By the way, John, I've got the perfect place card for you.
An American patriot who contains multitudes. I don't have to read tea leaves to guess whose placard I possess. His leaves of grass were where he got a high from male companionship. Walt Whitman. In 1980, I was 27 years old. I told my mother, I am bisexual. She responded, I don't understand this bisexual. I was working with a therapist, struggling with, am I straight or gay? My therapist knew a Dr. Marvin Coulter, a psychologist. Dr. Coulter was an older gay man who appreciated bisexual men's inner feminine and inner masculine aspects. We spent 11 years together. In 1979, Marv and I co-created an organization called Arete, the Bisexual Center of Southern California. Much of my life, I was too straight acting for gays or too gay acting for straights. I was told I was a fence sitter and that bisexuals did not exist.
Some days having curves is all I want. Some days it makes me sick. Some days I'd love to have hair down to my knees that curls and flows like a mermaid's. And other days a short boy's haircut is all I can think about. One day I can feel like a sexual goddess on this floating space rock. And other days a sexless alien creature is much more apt to describe my desires for my body.
My next two guests combine romantic lyricism with hardcore activism. Gef and Khindrid, activist, philosopher, poets who have spent their days downtown marching to the beat of our drummer.
After being seduced by the bright lights of Tinseltown, this handsome fellow began the most impressive journey as a serious scribe, audaciously depicting the plight of those with HIV/AIDS. Paul Honnet.
She is a stalwart of the civil rights movement and oh, so much more. I'm no longer accepting the things I cannot change, and I'm changing the things that I cannot accept. The brilliant words of Angela Davis.
I first started identifying as non-binary at the age of 56. Although I feel the title non-binary in today's world is reserved for anyone under the age of 30, and not to be celebrated by anyone over that age. I knew in my 20s I was different, but we didn't have the words or the terminology for it, as we do today. In the 80s and the 90s, you were either gay or straight. You were either masculine or a sissy boy. I had to pick a lane, and I had to commit to it. The past few years, though, I've witnessed our younger generation say, you know what? I'm figuring it out. Deal with it. I admire our youth for not having to feel obligated to fit the norm or society's expectations. They celebrate who they are as they are, no apologies. In the past, I've always tried to be the best version of myself, as long as it fit into what society expected of me. I no longer feel that way. I am exactly what people don't necessarily think when they hear the term non-binary. But I've also come to understand that there's just not one way to be non-binary. I accept and celebrate others and hope that they allow me the same opportunity as I continue this journey called life. I embrace all of who I am, and what I am is fabulous in God's eyes.
In 2020, the rising anger of Black lives being murdered and no justice for these souls swept over Los Angeles like a tsunami. People of all colors and races saw the injustices Black Americans face.
Been there, done that, still have the t-shirt, although it is a bit tight. Equal rights are human rights. Let that sink in. We march, we protest, we boycott, we organize, we vote, repeat. We march, we protest, we boycott, we organize, we vote. Get loud. We march, we protest, we boycott, we organize, we vote, we win. Being a fair-skinned, blue-eyed Latino, I witnessed firsthand the racist comments. And when others would talk, thinking it was just between us. And then the shock on their faces when they discovered I was Latino. Oh, and even worse, that I was gay. And I wasn't one of them.
This wasn't the first time a Black man was murdered by the police. It was the underlying rage of the feminine that pushed this over. The mothers whose sons had died, the aunts and grandmothers watching this happen time and time again with no justice, a spiritual nature rose out of the depths of the womb, insisting that these outrages stop happening. Those first few days in Los Angeles were out of a movie scene. A 6:30 p.m. partially enforced curfew on the very first day of the riots, and then an enforced 8:30 p.m. curfew continued for at least a week. 3 to 5 helicopters were constantly in the sky, circling over where the front lines were. How quickly martial law was put in place, coastal guards every few blocks.
I fight for my nephews and nieces, for my great nephews and nieces, and the planet that we're gonna leave for them. I fight for my queer family. I fight for my undocumented asylum-seeking families. I fight for my sister's right to choose their body, their choice. I fight for my Black and brown family and their right just to be. My body may be tired, but my heart and my mind, they're still strong. I will give support with my words. I will give support with my actions. I will continue to fight and vote and not give in because there's way too much at stake. As I said, I've been there, I've done that, I have the t-shirt. It is tight, but I'm not afraid to wear it.
We walked down Fairfax and Rosemont and saw all the store windows crashed in, broken glass everywhere, folks taking advantage and stealing while the store's alarms went off. The real protesters were on the front lines with microphones screaming, "Say his name," trying to have their voices heard. And the police officers fired, smoke, rubber bullets whizzing past. We ran past the dumpsters filled with fire, only looking back to watch the less fortunate get beaten and assaulted. It felt like we had time traveled back to Civil War times. The riots, they kept going, and the protests began to get organized. We kept going out and learned more each and every time. Leaders rose to the challenge, sacrificed themselves, and were arrested. 911 was unreachable. The only way not to get caught up in the police lines was to keep moving. We were flowing like a river in the streets, except when some folks got distracted and greedy and broke into businesses, taking what they could lay claim to. Motorcycles went ahead and communicated with us, and those leading us telling us where to go. We were instinctual and present. Police lines kept moving. We held our demonstrations and yelled our chants. speaking as one, yelling so loud, there was nothing else but this moment. There was no ego. There was no thinking about the future, the past, what you're gonna eat later for dinner. There was only fighting for justice and freedom. Derek Chauvin was convicted for manslaughter, and that a new precedent was set around police officers killing Black people. What we went out there for changed things, and that's what I will tell anyone who will hear.
And then came the threat from the Supreme Court to kill Roe v. Wade. If honesty is the best policy, I must admit to first thinking, it doesn't immediately affect me. Morbid, huh? Or misguided. Immediacy does not equal importance, clearly. The abolition of a right is an unraveling of a lifeline. So many fights in the making and knots made in the fabric of our supposedly forward-moving society are being undone. And that is when I had the tearful, fearful moment of, oh my gosh. Tears started rolling. The threat to overturn Roe v. Wade introduced me to the tasteful task of time travel. Not to make light of it, but I had to go back a couple of years to my past relationship. I had to see what this ruling meant for a me then. Cue time travel. Back to 2018, in an abusive relationship with an alcoholic man. The wisest of the queers reminded us that alongside of the threat from the Supreme Court came attacks on our other constitutional rights, like marriage equality, like the end of sodomy laws. Since they deny Roe v. Wade's impenetrable place in the history of this nation's law. Not our nation. Not right now. Most of my rights are mere amendments. My existence here as human is an afterthought.
The human right to decide what happens to my woman's body dwarfs every other thought for me today. I am that professor who has been in the office sourcing resources for troubled students. I do not think of this issue as not involving me because I'm no longer fertile. I cannot imagine a world where an unborn group of cells has more rights over a living, breathing, autonomous female. I think of all the marches and protests I have gone to where the sign that affects me the most funny and the most serious is, I can't believe I'm still protesting this shit. I laid down in front of my first nuclear power plant when I was 15. I will take this body and I will fight with it. My rights as a woman, as a lesbian, as an older person, as a Catholic, as a student, as a teacher without tenure, as a working class person growing up, as a human deeply caring about other humans, have always been under attack. Women won the right to vote only 100 years ago. The right to self-determination within our bodies 50 years ago. As a lesbian, I won the right to marry in California 14 years ago, and I lost it that same year. I won the right to marry in the country where I pay taxes only 7 years ago. I don't feel luxurious about human rights. I don't lean back on my comfy couch and relax. I'll never take my rights for granted. They have always been on a knife's edge. The question is, what courage do I have to fight the attacks? Will I have the courage of Alice Paul, an architect of suffrage and the creative mind that brought protests to Washington and began the hunger strikes in jail? She was force-fed twice a day for 55 days and left jail with permanent throat damage. I want to have the courage that I had in ACT UP, laying down in front of traffic. I want to have the courage I had blocking Randall Terry and Operation Rescue from shutting down an abortion clinic. Please, God, let us find each other, shoulder to shoulder, those who will stand with us. Because, yes, our rights have always been under attack, and they are under attack now. After the debacle of Trump in 2016, I had RISE tattooed on my left forearm, upside down. So you can only read it when my fist is in the air. Well, my fist is in the air.
Oh, do I have to read now? Like, or I'm crying? Okay, hold on. Okay. I can't read it. Is the future mine? These questions inspired me to write a love letter to myself. I think of time as an eternal spiral. Picture a slinky extended from sky to ground, and imagine sitting on the first rung. Years later, on the same position of the same slinky, but now about 20 inches above. Time is like that. So, is the future mine? Of course. I want to explain this better. It's difficult to verbalize a concept created in a pictorial realm, so I'll try another way to introduce to you the future that belongs to me. First and foremost, it is mine because I decide it to be. Yesterday, today, I'll choose again tomorrow. Resilience has taught me not to rely on the circumstantial, and so I don't. Am I and will I be? I'm not one to define myself in relation to the surrounding world. My authenticity isn't transactional because worth exceeds an entity's relation to other. I envision an evolved me. That is my approach to making us certain my world in the future is better than the world I experience today. So, to answer the question of, will I be supported and recognized and loved and successful? A 1,000 times yes. This is because of my evolving approach to consciousness. This is because of my evolving approach to consciousness and how I decide to paint my own perception.
My final guest is a transcendent poet with stakes in our future, Theo. Theo arrives in joy, as does the ghostly, gyrating artist whose place card even emanates the heat of the future.
He might be considered more sexually fluid than sexually lurid. He saw the future, that much is certain. And whether he's galloping on a horse or going up and down the stripper pole, he's making noise in a big way. I didn't know who this artist was a year ago, but now he's part of our future and our present. Lil Nas X. In the future, there are no flying cars. Instead, I've stopped burying my trans sisters and brothers. In the future, we haven't landed on Mars, but we have stopped yelling at people for just holding hands. The future is not far away. It awaits eager like a kid on a Christmas day. It's a fire that you cannot put away. The future is my friend Jessie not having to hold their car keys in between their fingers to make it safe to their car. The future is my little cousin bringing her first girlfriend home, not being scared of what they'll say because she had a cousin that did it first. The future is classrooms full of kids learning about every queer hero. This is about doing all the things that we were not allowed to do before. The future is full of my hopes and dreams and fears, that I've kept in a jar. I watch it every night before falling asleep, trying to conceive the idea that life is both beauty and terror, but we can hold each other through it all.
I will have lived on the planet for 80 years in 2032. I worry about mental and mobile decline. When I look in the mirror, I see a young Gordon, but hiding within my body is aching, depression, anxiety. I can't stop being negative about the future. Smoky air, scarce food, no water. Spirituality has fallen off my radar. Writing is my only soul food. Snuggling with my husband soothes my evenings. I hate saying, thank God I wasn't born today, but it is selfishly true. The word gay will define me in 2032, but it will be isolating. Trying to replace friends who have died is exhausting. Friends are irreplaceable connections, not commodities. The Gordon of whom everyone said, how does he juggle his life, so organized, so much energy, always so happy and positive, will disintegrate by 2032, corrupted by fading memories. I wish I could stop catastrophizing, as my husband Neil would say. If I could believe the next generation will be changed the polarization, if I could believe my words would make a difference, will I let myself be taken care of if I fail? I need my brain to be defragmented, a new hard drive. My moods can't keep swinging up and down. Rambling to the dark edges wears me down. I will scream if someone says you should be happy, and I can't find a reason why I am unhappy.
Someone asked, where will you be in 10 years? Being almost 70 years old, I hope to be an out bisexual and happy in the world. Most of all, I hope to be alive. At times, the onslaught of tragedies of life come too quickly. Tears fill my eyes, and I think about the current political situation. Sadness weighs me down, and I contemplate continued global warming. Personally, I will be fine. At 80 years old, I will be a bit slower, somewhat wiser, weathered, and honed by life. I dread in 2024, we will go into a darker, conservative, repressive time. I've learned after living many decades that things come and go, that all is temporary. The only guarantee is change. I need to trust in something larger than me. I pray and hope that the dreams and rights of the queer community will continue. The process of human evolution, the persistence of humanity to continue. And that kindness, compassion, and love will propel us forward. As an aging bisexual man, I value history and all who came before me. Brick by brick, day by day, foundations have been created, enabling me to come out of the closet. My brief lifetime of 70 or 80 years has given me a considerable perspective of humankind. Perhaps by telling my stories, I will make a ripple in the life of others, something that carries us beyond my own existence.
It felt like drowning. Feeling like the shell my brain resides in was nothing more than that, a shell. A case of flesh and bone, but inside was an endless ocean, cold and dark, that swallowed me. I learned that there are people in this world who don't think I'm allowed to have a say in what happens to my body. Years later, it came out that the school doctor who gave me my first women's exam had been taking advantage of girls in his office for years. Instead of an exam to ensure I was healthy, it was a test to see what I would allow him to do to me in front of his assigned observing nurse, another woman. I grew up taught to be silent, to be small, to ensure I didn't upset anyone with my existence. Being passive was a way to make sure everyone else was happy, but what about me? Am I supposed to let everyone else walk over my back to cross the canyon? What happens when everyone has made it safely? How am I supposed to follow? The truth is they never wanted me to follow. They did not anticipate having me by their side, only under their feet, but I believe now is the time for me to step forward, to take the lead, to take the hands of women and girls and anyone else who has had their personhood taken from them. Because alone we may be scared. We may feel like we're drowning or being swallowed up or being burned alive or falling from a cliff, and that we might just die of fear.
In my future, there are no wars, no angry children, no mass murders. There's peace on earth. The ones who stayed have always been here. Everyone else went to Mars. The indigenous are leading us on their respective lands. I live in a big community. I am loved and respected as an elder. We govern ourselves, and it is better this way. We still use technology, but we know balance, and all know our place in the community. Everyone enjoys what they do, and life is good. We go through pain, and we cry, but instead of feeling alone, we rise up together, stronger. The sun is setting as I look out the window. The white buffalo is staring at me, and we share a knowing glance. This is it, she signals. This is what you've been waiting for.
I wake up every morning with a malleable body. I have learned to no longer censor my divinity. I exist in more ways than one. I am a boyfriend wife, a brother, a granddaughter. I am a shapeshifter that can never sit still. I am a busker in a sundress with combat boots. I am the new designer of my own house. I am the painter, the teacher, the waver. I sail through these feelings knowing this too shall go away. I wait for the summer and I take long sunbaths with my lover. I see her sweat in a white see-through shirt. I could kiss every drop of it. I hold her in my manly arms and I kiss her with my hot transsexual lips. And I undress her with my delicate lesbian hands. I shoot down chemicals every other day and I whisper my new name like a prayer that can keep me safe. I watch myself change and I allow myself to do it. My gender comes and goes like the changing leaves. And I try to remind myself there is power in this, an everlasting transition.
My hope for the future of our queer family is that we embrace each other in the way we had hoped our biological families would have embraced us. That we continue to learn from our storytelling and our life-affirming examples. That we share our history and our victories, our loves, our losses. We share our pains, our gains. We celebrate our uniqueness and difference and what it is to be one in the community of LGBTQAI+. Individually, we're a force. Collectively, we're unstoppable. Being queer is no longer a badge of shame, something to hide, but rather an honor to be celebrated. We are leaders, we are parents, we are social activists, we are resilient, we are remarkable, we are humanity.
You are beautiful. You are needed. I hear the echo of my queer ancestors calling my name. We are finally home.
home!